Hey guys, how are you doing? And welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about how many books you need to make money on KDP, and specifically I'm referring to low and medium content books in this video. So I've published nearly 600 books on KDP, and most of these are low content books, and the first 500 or so of those were actually created in the first couple of years that I started on KDP, which I find quite hard to comprehend even now. When I try and think back, it just doesn't feel like I did that many in that time, and I guess it just didn't feel like work at the time, especially because it was all quite exciting and I felt very motivated during that time to carry on. I had a YouTube comment recently that said it appears that successful publishers have over 500 books. Do I think that's the case? While I do think there is an advantage to having a decent amount of books on KDP, and I will explain why a bit later in this video, I also think there are a number of reasons why you can't assume that success is a result of the number of books that you have, or having a certain number of books, or that you'll definitely have success on KDP if you have over 500 books or however many books it is that you have in your mind. The first thing to note is that everyone is different and we all have different levels of experience and different skill sets, and it isn't just whether you have graphic design skills, for example, that make the difference. I don't come from a design background myself, but there are still other skills that could help you, such as knowledge of Amazon ads, keyword or niche research, and just the process of researching in general. Basically, there are so many variables at play, and how many books you have is just one component of that. So the other thing to mention is that only a minority of self-publishers actually share their results at all. So there are thousands of people on KDP, and while it may appear that successful publishers have 500 plus books, that's only a handful of publishers that are actually vocal. And even within the vocal group, there are all sorts of numbers being thrown around. So I just think it's important not to generalize from, the handful of people who are actually really sharing all of their results all of the time. And while I don't think you can make assumptions about how many books you definitely need on KDP to make money, I still want to share why I think that having a decent volume of books has been important to me, and why it might also be important to you. So I believe I made the first 500 books in the first couple of years on KDP. I do know that I did a lot at first, maybe the first couple of hundred at least, very quickly, because a lot of them were notebooks, and a lot of those don't sell at all now. And also at first I created all kinds of books. I experimented with various things. Some I researched quite a bit, but some had almost zero research at all. And one of those I have mentioned before actually is one of my best-selling books. I didn't really research it. I actually researched some of the keywords and things after the fact of even creating the book and publishing it. But at that time I did create a lot of notebooks just because they were quick, and I thought at the time I have to get as many books out as I possibly can, because that was kind of the mood at the time, for what I came to believe to be true, which I think to some degree people still think is the case. But only a very, very small amount of those notebooks actually ended up selling consistently, and barely any of them sell today. There are a handful that still do though. But basically I was just chucking a lot of ideas out there and seeing what stuck. And after a while, you just start to learn what niches might work for you, because they start making sales. But also you start to see patterns, such as what styles really work for you. And you'll find that there are similarities among the books that are selling, and you can obviously use that information to create other books that are more likely to sell. So therefore, over time, I just got better at figuring out what was more likely to sell for me. That still doesn't mean it will always work. I still create books that don't sell, and often that is because I also still create books purely out of choice and not as a direct result necessarily from research, because I think that's what still makes it fun. Obviously, after creating so many books, you can get burnt out. You can just not want to do it anymore. And for me, having that freedom to think, well, I'm just going to create this book because it's something that I feel like I want to do, without being too picky about, oh, is this actually going to be too competitive, or are there too many of these books out there? Are there no books like this out there, and maybe no one's even looking for this? If I kind of put out those things from my mind, sometimes I just put myself in the frame of mind as what kind of book I would like to go out and actually purchase. Is there anything that I've never seen that I would like to have myself? So I think experimentation and not just being rigid can be beneficial, because I think sometimes someone might have a good idea, what they think is a good idea, but when they look into it, it doesn't seem like the numbers actually add up. And I would say probably just, go for it anyway if that's what you want to do. The good thing about low content or even medium content books, they're not going to take you hopefully months and months and months just to create one book. If you could create something anyway within the matter of a couple of weeks or even a few days, then what's the harm in doing it? So if I had somehow had all this knowledge to begin with, it's possible that I could have potentially made money with far fewer books, but that isn't the case. I had to go through this process of trial and error and trying to figure things out for myself, and also just learning, even from a design perspective. I think I got better at doing that over time. I got better at figuring out what styles are probably going to work for me, because I do create my own covers. So I needed to go through that process, and I think a lot of people probably are the same way. For me, it was the experience of creating all these books in the first place that really led me to where I am. So if I'd just put 10 books out there in the beginning and just stopped, then I never would have stumbled across some of those niches that work for me, or the keywords that work for me, or I would have never actually got better at designing interiors or designing covers, and I never would have learned Amazon ads. I never would have come up with some of the ideas that I had through creating other books, because sometimes while you're creating one thing, you kind of get an idea for another, or when you're researching something, you stumble across something else that you've never seen before, and so on and so on. So it is all a learning process, and that's why I can feel frustrated when people get upset about not making sales when they only have 5 books or 10 books or whatever it is. You need to keep learning and improving over time, and not just expect that everything's going to work for you. And therefore, I do think it's quite important that you don't get emotionally attached to your books individually. That way, if they don't work out for you, you can just move on to the next thing. You don't have to kind of get fixated on something that you think should 100% work and it doesn't. And there could be multiple reasons why that is. It doesn't matter, because it's not actually wasted time, no matter how much time and energy you think you've put into something. And I've had that recently with a book that I published just, last week, that I can't even get impressions to this book. And I'll talk about ads actually in a different video, so I'm not going to get bogged down with that. But basically, it's been really difficult for me to get any traction with ads to that book, let alone any organic sales. So I could get upset about that and just, not carry on. But I know ultimately that it's not been wasted time. Every single effort that you put in is ultimately going to help you in the long run, whether it's going to be experience or just part of that learning curve where you are going to get better and you're going to improve. And sooner or later, you are going to stumble across something that is going to work for you. Obviously, I can't guarantee that for you. It might be that KDP doesn't work for you, or it doesn't suit you, but something will work for you along the line, whether it's KDP or something else. You just have to keep going and keep trying new things, not just keep throwing money at a book that might never be a success. It is very often, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, but it's often the case that it's the books that you don't really expect that can take off at sometimes. In addition to this, it just also makes sense for me to have more books from the perspective that the more fish there are in the pond, the more likely you are to catch a fish. But by that, I don't mean spamming hundreds of the same book in different colours or with different names on them. I am talking about creating unique books each time, not just the same interior with multiple covers. That is aside from notebooks, obviously, or dot grid journals or whatever it is that have completely plain interiors, sketchbooks and stuff like that. But I think it helps you can only upload 3 books a day now. When I started KDP, there was no cap at all. And so as a result, people got to upload hundreds of books in a month. So at least Amazon has made a cap on that, and you can only upload 3 books now a day, although that is still quite a lot. Aside from the quantity of books, though, there are a few things that I think helped me personally that were not within my own control. So one thing was timing. I found some niches that were relatively untapped when I went into them, even though people were still moaning then about oversaturation in 2019. KDP was nothing like it is today. But when I started late in 2019, I did not run any ads at all. I didn't even start learning them for over a year. So all of those initial sales I had were purely organic sales, and that means without ads. So I'm not sure how easy or hard it is to get organic sales today, because I pretty much run ads to all new books. But I know for sure there are plenty of books out there that do make sales without ads. Another thing was experience. So not in self-publishing or graphic design exactly, but I did have knowledge of keyword research, SEO, and niche research as well. And I had also been on Canva since 2015. So I did have a lot of experience using that already, and that certainly did help me a lot. But back then, Canva had only been around for a couple of years. So it's really grown a huge amount in that time. I remember when I used to mention Canva to people, no one actually knew what that was. And now everyone seems to know what it is. So it's really grown so much. Ultimately, it's going to be a combination of factors that contribute to your success on KDP. It's not just going to be that you have 10 books or you have 500 books or you have 3,000 books. And it's not just going to be that you're a great designer or a good marketer, that you chose the right niche at the right time, that you were lucky, or that you're an Amazon ads expert, or that you've had 5 years experience already in print on demand. The reality is that it will end up being a combination of various things, and that combination is going to be different for everyone. There is no one formula to follow, and there is no magic number of books that you need. But having a lot of books does give you several advantages. More fish in the pond, more opportunities, more experience, and more chance of discovering niches and styles that work for you, more chance of just stumbling across something ultimately that is going to work for you too. So I hope you found this video useful or at least interesting, and please let me know in the comments your thoughts on this. Do you think having a large volume of books makes all the difference? And what is your personal experience so far with self-publishing on KDP? But that's all for today, so thank you very much for watching, and I will speak to you again very soon.